Hello, good evening, and welcome to 2020 Vision on Tuesday, the 30th of June, the day that Boris Johnson says we are going to build ourselves out of recession. So I think he's doing a bit of an impersonation of John McDonnell there. But let's not worry about that just now. We are here with a special guest this evening. And that guest is Roderick Lynch, who's the chair of the Liberal Democrat Campaign for Race Equality. So, hello there, Roderick. How's
Hello, good
lockdown
evening.
been treating you then, eh?
It's not too bad. I've taken it easy. I have an underlying condition which I am well aware of could cause me issues, and so I've been doing most things from my living room or my garden or conservatory. But I've been able to do things as near as normal as possible, apart from leaving the house on most occasions and some of the queues I'm seeing in the shops, etc., etc. But I've been able to do my work from home that I would expect to do, be it I was running around on the streets.
Yes, I'm a bit the same. I'm also shielding at the moment and working from home. Are you a customer of British Gas at all?
No, I'm not. So I don't have British Gas. I have Power.
Then count yourself very lucky, because they're absolutely hopeless. Okay, that was last week's story. Now let's look at this week's story. We're going to talk about Black Lives Matter and about statues in particular, and why the hordes of people are running around major cities in the world and taking them down. But first of all, we need to get to know you, Roderick. So I think you grew up in London, didn't you? What were your experiences of racism as a child?
I was born in Camberwell. Born in Camberwell many moons ago. Well, I'm off the calendar. Put it that way. It might look black don't crack, but I'm off the calendar. And I lived and studied in Southeast London. And then when I was fairly young, I was involved in sporting athletics, the Haringey Athletics Club in North London. As a sprinter, and after numerous injuries, I decided to go into business. And I did that. And in my business, I had government contracts. And I was a victim of corruption and fraud. And I got involved with politicians to help me. And I ended up going to Liberal Democrats. And I joined up with an MP. I became my constituency MP, Simon Hughes. And that was around about 2004. And I've been here ever since. As you know, across the political estate, all 650 constituencies, people like me are few and far between. And you do have some decorated ones at the top of the food chain, but predominantly you do not see people of my ilk at the various levels of politics. So I've been fighting for a number of years to see people like me involved in politics, but moreover, getting people to understand that in this world where we see systemic and structural racism, that if we don't register to vote, then we're not in the game. So to be able to play and get in the game, to affect change, you have to register to vote, to get involved, to help change the rules. And that is how I got involved in politics. So from business to politics, I've experienced racism. I have a business with nearly 800 employees. And as I said, I get help from my local MP. And I was brought down by, there was corruption in there, but I was brought down by, I believe, the racist actions of a certain financial institution. I'd love to say the name, but we're still at the High Court, so I can't talk about that. But I can say to you that I've been a victim of it. It's cost me a considerable amount of money. I'm from a family, a large family, with people like brothers who have experienced it. And I live my working day most days since I've recovered from cancer to fight, him up there to give me a second chance, fight for equality for the people that need it. And I don't say the people that need it, I need it, but for the people that don't understand what's happening. I was brought up and I schooled in history in the British school curriculum. And it's only the last few years I'm beginning to find out more about my Black history, and more so since what's going on now, especially COVID, etc. And learning about the statues and seeing what's happened in Bristol. I got my books out and started to go through them and got on Google and started checking. And then I can see see some of the injustices that we're celebrating. These so-called decorated individuals who made their money on the backs of people like my mother and father's grandmother and great grandmother. It's as scary as that, and it's as simple as that. You see it and you actually feel it, because you can talk to people that, oh yes, my mother told me that, and her mother explained this, and this what used to happen, and we're seeing it now. So it is raw, and it is close to home, because we've uncovered some in the United Kingdom. Some of the family members, great grandsons, etc., great granddaughters, and they're living off the money of those same trusts that were set up when slavery was abolished. So it's painful, and some people have got a lot to say about it. I wouldn't call myself an expert on it, but I've lived experiences and I've experienced it. And so I like to share some of the stuff which has happened to me. But first and foremost, I would like to see more of what happened in Tower Hamlets when the Milligan statue was taken down, or the Colston one, which was thrown in the drink in Bristol. I'm not saying.
Let me interrupt you a moment. Before we get onto the recent statues. I mean, I think you make a very good point about the lack of education around. Britain is a segregated society, in my opinion, and we don't quite bring that. We don't bring that across. I grew up in rural Essex. Well, not always, but for the most part, I went to secondary school there, and I went away to university when I was 18. And when I was 18, up until that point, I had met one black person, one non-white person, and so it's quite a change coming to somewhere like Tower Hamlets and seeing that flourish. But even Tower Hamlets, we have this famous bit, Spitalfields, where most of our Bangladeshi population used to live. And the eastern side of Tower Hamlets had, until the 1980s, had virtually no Bangladeshi people in it at all, and virtually no people of colour. I live on the east side of the Isle of Dogs, and the bus goes right round the Isle of Dogs, and you could bet on it. You could make a fortune. You could make a fortune betting that if you got on the bus at the northern eastern part of the Isle of Dogs, and that bus went round the Isle of Dogs, you would have all white people on the bus. You would not have a black person until you got 3/4 of the way round and you got to the black estate. And it's that kind of segregation that, for us, led to the British National Party being elected here in this part of the.
That was a sad time. That was a sad time. I remember the Liberal Democrats were in power in the borough at the time, and we were seeing it was our actions that caused the BNP guy to be elected. And Tower Hamlets turned its back on the Liberal Democrats. And I remember it was Paddy Ashdown that came down to Tower Hamlets to sort the issue out. And I've since been in Tower Hamlets to talk to liberal-minded people, liberal-minded voters, to apologise for the actions of those in 1992. And then I came to engage with one of your most popular councillors, Councillor Rabina Khan, to join the Liberal Democrats. And the Bangladeshi community and the black and Asian community were up in arms and saying, you're a Liberal Democrat, you come here wearing that rosette, and you're coming to take away our sister to join you. You're proven racist. The party is proven racist, and I apologise for what took place. It was unfortunate what happened. We learned from that. Lessons were learned, and we moved on. And I'd like to say that we have a force now. We call it a force because she's a force of nature, but we have Councillor Rabina Khan in Shadwell, and we look to have more in that borough because the borough is in need of liberal-minded thinking and liberal help. So I'd like to see in time to come more people that look like me and look like the people.
So thank you for saying that, because I think that's very helpful. I mean, history is history, and no party in Tower Hamlets, I don't think, has a blameless, faultless record over the last 40 years by any means. But we can't just move on from those times. It's nice for people to hear that from you, I think. But what I'm interested in is, so far you've talked about being a black person, being in South London, what you experienced by way of discrimination. And that got you into politics, and you're liberally minded. But where does class fit in to this? Because is class still relevant in Britain today? Or
Class is
do
relevant in Britain.
questions like race sort of modernise that notion of
Yeah,
class?
when you talk about race and modernisation,
I think you've muted yourself somehow,
haven't touched the
Roderick. Is
thing.
that possible? Ah, there you are. Yep.
Yeah. When you talk about race, you also have to talk about class, because race is out there, but the socioeconomic class, you've got people that, how can I say it, that like my ilk, where we're in low paid, a lot of people are in low paid jobs, in council housing, overcrowded housing, etc., etc., and they're affected by a whole host of things. It's down to their class, and you only have to look at it in these COVID times that we're going through, and like for instance Leicester, Oldham, Lambeth, Lewisham, Tower Hamlets, where they've had high rates of COVID. It goes with the population of the area and how we're housed. And if you don't earn the amount of money to be able to live in these so-called affordable housing places, or the councils are not building enough council housing to house you, then you're in trouble. So no matter what anybody says, race and class, there is that intrinsic link.
And where does community come in? Because as you're talking about that, it occurs to me one of the things we've said on this programme before is that we didn't, as a community, wait for the government to sort everything out. Otherwise, I think we'd still be waiting. During the COVID stuff, the community came forward and sorted out its own food parcels, distribution, food systems, practical help, and so forth.
Well, I would say that government, you've got to take your lead from the community. And I say this, even in business and all that we do, if you engage with the community, you bring the community along with you. Inclusion is the key. Integration is the key. I will talk to my next door neighbor and say hi and whatever, but I have to say I've been living next to them for 5 or 6 years and they didn't speak to me. But when right, fair enough, I believe they had an issue, but when her husband had an accident and was in a wheelchair and I could see him struggling, I went up to him one day and said, if you need anybody to take you down to the high street, I don't mind pushing you or helping you, etc. And from that day, these people that live next door to me, 2 head teachers, are like our cousins. That's because I bothered to speak to them. But what people don't do in power, they don't bother. You put them in power by putting that tick in the box. But they don't. When they get there, they don't speak to you. The drawbridges pull up, and it's as if the community is an afterthought. And look what's happened on COVID. It was people like myself and everyday working people that lobbied the government to explain to them that people were dying. I lobbied some of our MPs to say that I know people are dying. I know people have been put in high COVID wards because of their skin colour. They're cheaper to employ. They come from the nursing homes, nursing agencies, and they're put in high COVID wards and threatened with doctors are threatened with manslaughter charge if they don't treat people without their PPE. And I was told that that can't be right. That can't be true. 2 weeks later, it was true. And Channel flowed through the story. But me as a community person, an activist, was raising it because people that I knew that worked in the NHS were telling me, nurses and doctors that had saved my life. I had a cancer attack twice, and I was only in remission from March of this year. They were telling me how they felt and how it was happening. And all right, fair enough. I wasn't able to know that because of my underlying conditions, it would cause me issues. But when people started to raise it, the government weren't listening. You had I call them the Laurel and Hardy of politics. You had Priti Patel telling you one thing and Matt Hancock telling you something else. And you got the other one, the one on the zip wire, who purports to be the Prime Minister telling you, stay alert, do this, do that. You didn't know if he was coming. What we wanted to know was this thing is affecting BAME people. What are you going to do about it? And it was hard to get a coherent answer. Stay put, go here. If your name's Cummings, you can go there. Patel says, you've got to stay in, go out. And then they look for the angle. They look for the angle that they were, the excuse that they were going to bring at a later date was, okay, these BLM marches are going to cause a spike in COVID, etc., etc. And I went on LBC and I tried to put that point to Nick Ferrari and he shut me down. But I told him I won't go away, and I chased him all over Twitter to explain all. But that was what we thought that Hancock was angling for. But then when the lovely British weather came, the summer weather came, and everybody had enough. You tell us one thing, but you do something else. So they went out in their droves in the sunny weather. Then they couldn't use that excuse anymore. It's the ethnic minorities out there campaigning for equality, risking their lives in a pandemic just to get their voices heard. They couldn't use that excuse anymore, because at the end of the day, the British people decided we've had enough of this, and we're going out for some sunshine. So it equalised it all.
There's been a lot of stuff on the internet, wasn't there, about showing photos of those beaches with all those white people, well, pink people on them, and saying, imagine if this was a load of Muslims, what the headlines would say.
Exactly. But then you look at it, you look at over the years what they've said about Muslim people and face coverings, etc. What are we doing now? We all have to have face coverings. Yeah, they were dragging the Muslim people over the coals over the last few years, saying about it was unethical to cover their face and hide their identity, etc., etc. What is the world doing? What goes around?
Do you remember when Jack Straw was going on about, like, I just can't relate to a constituent if she's got a headscarf and a face covering? And you think, man, do you never talk to your constituents on the phone? What happens if somebody rings up? Can you not have a proper conversation with them because you can't see their whole face? That's you have to call it out as racist, don't you?
Strange times we live in now. Strange times that we're living in now.
Well, maybe now that we're getting into people taking power into their own hands, that's what we should do about those unaffordable homes. You know, we've got a load of empty flats on the Isle of Dogs because people build them as an investment, determined never to bother letting them out, just to sit back and let the value of them grow, and therefore those people are worth more. You're a business person, you will understand, you know, what those other people say.
I understand all of that, but now what has to happen is this: we've got to look at this COVID pandemic. The Black Lives Matter movement has made us look at ourselves, and when we look at ourselves, what are we doing? What are we? We're bystanders while our people are starving, hungry, living in substandard accommodation if they live there at all, or live under bridges, etc. While the select few are allowed to hold property above shops in these affluent places of London. No, it's time for people to stand up and for people to make the stance. They started on this, and people are starting to listen. And it's not just a black and Asian minority ethnic thing. When you look at Bristol and you look at predominantly the people that threw that statue rightly into the drink, I'm not advocating for criminal damage, but as Mervyn Rees, the mayor of Bristol, said, it should have come down ages ago. The only thing that I honestly can say they got wrong is that thing should be allowed to go into a museum. It should have been damaged beyond repair, because why are we celebrating these people? One philanthropic act, and next minute they're God, they're in statues, etc., etc. And then we have to see those statues every day. All right, fair enough. I look at Guy's Hospital, Thomas Guy. We go there for our ailments. I was treated by them for cancer. Thank you very much. However, you can't take away from the fact that individual, celebrated individual, is Thomas Guy. So it's either you punish them or you come up with policies that these people with these trusts have got to hand over, and they've got to be able to see that not just reparations, they've got to be able to be involved in the community for the communities that they destroyed. It's not worth saying, okay, this was in 1833 or 1831, etc. I'll give you an example. We have one family called the Pennant family from Wales. They live in Wales. One of the Pennants died 101 years old in 1967. And one of the grandsons is living, never worked. He's a grandson, controls the trust, and he's living off of the money from back then. Then they enriched themselves with slate mines all over Wales from the backs of slaves. People that my ancestors are Irish. I have one of the slave names, which is Lynch. And at the end of the day, when you talk to your relatives and grandmother, etc., they're closer to it than I am. And to struggle hard to be able to achieve equality because of the color of a man's skin. I'm not the kind of person that goes around with a chip on the shoulder, etc., and blames the whole world for the ills. But I say this now, I can say this: you didn't teach me my history, my black history. You taught me history according to what you wanted me to learn, and now I'm uncovering some of the atrocities of yesteryear. And I think it's only right that the people then more decorated and educated than myself in some of those universities, some of the captains of industry tomorrow, are saying, well, hang on a minute, my colleague on the left is Asian, my colleague on the right is maybe Chinese, etc. And we all got to stick together. We don't see color or skin or yellow skin or black skin. We see a person next to us. So we have to take, we have to take a stance. And if it means pulling it down, pull it down. But I don't want to get involved in saying that I'm hell-bent on destroying statues, etc., etc. If there's anything that's controversial about it, in such a sense, put it in a museum. If it's anything to do with the slave trade, I can't say put it in a museum. I'd say if it has to be destroyed or housed in a box or crate, yeah, put a black plate up there, like Mary Seacole Foundation is trying to advocate for some of the statues that be taken out. But to tell you that I could look somebody in the eye and say they don't matter. It's nice to see places like East London where it's integrated. Years ago, it wasn't, and there was a lot of issues there, and it was called pea bashing and all the rest of it when they were out beating up Asians, etc., etc. And sooner or later, integration was forced on them, and in a big way, because they were able to stand up for themselves. And that's what I'm saying. Milligan owned 2 sugar plantations and had over 500 enslaved people there. Okay, he helped, decorated, built the West India dock, etc., etc., run the driving forces. But does his statue have to be there? No, he does not. Does he have to be celebrated for what he does? No, he does not. At the end of the day, we now know the history, and we want to see change. Black lives do honestly matter.
I mean, I want to say 2 things before we move on. First, and if you listen back to yourself, you'll hear it as well. It's all men, isn't it? They don't put up statues of women. So it's like it's doubly worse for women, so it's going through, because it's like we're totally written out of history as well. You know, it's all the white men who make this.
But when we talk about women, I understand where you're coming from, and the women, the vote, etc. Emily Pankhurst and those that have fought for women's rights, and also in America, where we fought for women's rights in America, etc., etc. Selma, I use that as an example. But these so-called slave owners, I call them, I've got other words to them, which are, this is a family show, so I presume I'll keep my language, to my tone-deaf language, to myself. But women didn't have a say in those days, not just white women, black women. On the plantations, it was always seen to bring slaves over from Africa was getting to be expensive. And now that it was a solidified business, it's better to rape and breed women than be bringing in slaves. So women, in their eyes, be it black, mixed race, Caucasian or otherwise, they had no voice.
I think there's a whole new story to tap into there, which perhaps we won't get into tonight. But I hope people who are thinking about these issues won't forget the role of women as we go around talking about the oppression we get from being surrounded by statues of white men. So that's only, just to let you know, in case you didn't, the Robert Milligan statue is quite meaningful for us in East London for 2 reasons. One is that when it was taken away very quickly, which looked like a very good response to the Black Lives Matter movement, we had actually had some community pressure for that move as well. And our community didn't actually take the statue and drag it off and throw it in the Thames. They put cardboard notices on it saying Black Lives Matter, so that everybody could see it, but the statue wasn't damaged. So I think, that's a whole new way of peaceful protest, and it worked. So that's great. But we've got, sometimes the statues can be the easy bit. We've got a mayor in Tower Hamlets who's had that statue taken down, and because Black Lives Matter is important, and there's a consultation going on across the borough about all these different places. It needn't just be a statue, it could be a road, it could be a building. And at the same time, our council workforce is getting sacked. So the administration that says it's anti-racist is also sacking our entire council workforce and re-engaging them on worse terms and conditions next Monday. And that's I think, just...
That's dreadful. That's dreadful. And it flies in the face of what's going on now. Fair enough, Tower Hamlets, one of the most diverse boroughs in London. My borough, London Borough of Southwark, similar so. I would say this: they need to listen to reason. At the end of the day, if BLM has to go down and lobby them at their council chambers and ring the council chambers, then so be it. But Biggs can't get away with doing this. You're taking people that have served the borough, served the people, served the community, the same community that you wish to represent, and now you're sacking them and re-engaging them, or attempting to re-engage them on worse terms. No, that's not the rule of tomorrow. Or I can say this: maybe they recognise that they've been done out of £40 million from the Desmond West Ferry housing development. Maybe they needed every penny that they can get. Maybe go back to government and ask for more. You need more money because you haven't got enough. Your budget, you spent money on all sorts of things in this COVID crisis, and you haven't got the funds. And government itself, Robert Jenrick, did the borough out of £40 million. I mean, from 106 money from that development.
West Ferry.
All these things. Yeah, I mean, they have an answer. Every plus and every plus. There's an opposite. There's a what's the word they use? There's equals and opposites attracts. That's whatever word my father used to say.
To every action there is an equal and opposite reaction.
That's it. Yeah.
Drummed into us at school. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, all I can say is sad, and the likes of the Labour administration should be ashamed of themselves. They're meant to be a party of the working people, but they're allowing their backs to be broken by government, and then turning on the workers to reduce their salaries. No.
Yeah. It's it is very very shocking, and that this is going on. And last week they were heroes, public servants on the front line. This week they are inconvenient. And I'm just looking down at my screen here. I knew I'd noted it down. Tower Hamlets has just announced a shortfall in funding of just over 35 million from the first quarter of this year. It reckons it's overspent because of all the demands COVID has put on it. It's overspent by 35 million. So yes, that money from Richard Desmond, the 45 million, whatever it is that we might have had, is sadly missed. But who's going to make it up? And at the moment, it's the low-paid council workers, and I'm sure the low-paid council workers,
but it's
black and women.
Let's say it how we need to say it. Me and you would say low-paid council workers, but post-COVID, this COVID crisis, let's say it as it really is. It is BAME key workers that kept this country going since March the 23rd. And where now they're seeing a bitter light is, hang on a minute, let's clamp down on them now, because we're going to have 3 or 4 million unemployed out there to choose from. So now we got power over this lot. That is exactly as they see it, as cynical as that.
Sadly, they haven't produced an equalities impact assessment either. But that's Tower Hamlets for you. And I'm sure Unison would be very happy to see you on the picket line. There's a virtual picket line on Friday. Roderick, so if you've got nothing else on, I'm sure they would love to see you down there and feel they had some support from you and yours. But that's Tower Hamlets for you. I think we have to sort of move on a bit. And I noticed, obviously, that you're the chair of this of the Liberal Democrat Campaign for Racial Equality, CRE.
Yes.
And I'm wondering what the Liberal Democrats are actually trying to do by setting up that campaign. Is this a campaign? Is it a committee? What are you doing on it? You're the chair.
There is a committee behind it, and there's so many, I think about 700-800 members, active members. And what we try to do is, Liberal Democrats, we do good policy, but we're doing bad politics. For too many years and for too long, we sourced our members from the higher echelons of university and middle class, upper class, etc., etc. But we've got to get real. We are a national political party, and we've got to talk for everybody. And when I got involved in 2004, I watched it, and I could see this sprinklings of change happening under Charles Kennedy, etc. But it went backwards under Nick Clegg. And we've had a few leaders since. I'm sure I don't need to reheat that one. You know all about it. But we were a party aiming to represent people that we didn't have the role models and the people that they wish to see. We were not talking to BAME people, or it did not appear we were talking to BAME people on the street. You wouldn't find us, unless you were in Bermondsey working with Simon Hughes, you wouldn't find a lot of our activists in council estates, etc. And we had to take it back to basics and look at what we wish to do. In all parties, both Conservative and Labour, you have liberal-minded people. Between the two parties, 60-65%. So my idea was, well, hang on a minute. My father, who worked for the Home Office, always told us, listen, and I'll say it in his accent, listen to me, boy. Yeah, you vote Labour, don't vote nothing else. So I was happy when Simon Hughes converted him to Liberal Democrats. And I thought, well, hang on a minute, there's work to do and I wish to do it. And we Liberal Democrats recognised that at the high level, we needed to see change and senior members of the party come in that looked like people like myself, not just because they looked like that, because they had the talent. And we did a root and branch review of the party to see where we were going wrong. And we're now learning from those lessons. It was nice for us to see that we had Chucky Muna and Samji McCain as interlopers at the general election, but as they tried to save their own skins, they haven't stuck around, and obviously they didn't get through. But I believe that from the activities, when you look at what's happened in Bristol, etc., and you see how the communities are mixed, I believe that we have the policies that resonate with UK PLC. What we need to do is to engage them in registering to vote, to be able to take advantage of what we've got to offer. It's then to look at the two major parties, and you're always going to be squeezed in the middle. But if we've got policies and we've got the wherewithal and the know-how and determination to succeed, then come and look at us, come and join us. And that is what I believe. I'm still there. That's why I believe I'm still there, because I believe that there's just at the end of there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I believe that people now understand that there's a choice, and we are going to make sure that we take advantage of that choice, because we've got to make sure that the UK is listening to us. So since 2018, that is what I've been engaged in doing. Talking to anybody that will talk to me, because that was a Liberal Democrats' bad spot. They didn't go out and talk to people. They believe it can be done by computer and these little networks and tea clubs, etc. But you need to get in the markets, down the streets, on the council estates, on the job sites, talking to people and getting people to come and join you, because we want to look like the people we wish to represent. And at the moment, we don't.
Do you think there's a future for the mainstream parties that we have in the UK? Or if we're going to have this major recession, it seems to me the government, the Tories are really quite incompetent at the moment. They're flailing around. And
the Tories are flailing around because it's, at the moment, you've only seen them for the last, you had them since 2010, but you're seeing them in their naked flesh with this pandemic and the issues of COVID, etc. Every day it's policy on the hoof. Today was Boris's build, which is accelerated from the announcements they made prior to the election, etc., etc. Then you've got a rewashed up coming up next week of some form of budget statement from Rishi Sunak, and it's called fast this and fast that. At the end of the day, they talk about this deal and that deal. What we need is a coherent way of working and a coherent way of engaging the British population and telling people what's happening, not all these mixed messages. Don't do what I say, but don't do what I say, but don't do as I do, etc., etc. All this kind of stuff. So I say it. The Labour Party has been rescued from oblivion. So at the end of the day, there may be some hope there for them. But by Christ, if Boris Johnson doesn't get this right, and what he's been proposing to do before the general election, I say this to him: he'll be toast. Because when you look at Conservative, and you look at Labour, as bad as Corbyn was for Labour, Corbyn, the numbers that Keir Starmer was able to work with is on the backs of the BAME people, because the northern part of the United Kingdom left Labour and voted for the Tories, and the areas of high deprivation and ethnic minorities, London, etc., the big cities, stayed with Labour. So yes, they left Labour for the Labour for the Conservative in the north, but we stayed there because we never had anywhere to go. So that's why I'm saying Lib Dem, listen to us, give us a hearing, because we were found wanting. Everybody wanted change, they wanted to see equality, etc., but there was no home for us. So I say, look at us, we're going for a leadership election at the moment, but both Layla Moran and especially Ed Davey, they're talking BAME, inclusion, diversity, till the cows come home. And I'm happy to stand behind them. I took part in our general election review, and the Liberal Democrat general election review talks about engaging with BAME people. And I was happy that my 14 colleagues on the panel, the great and the good, listened, that to be able to move on and become a major force, you have to give the BAME people a chance to vote for something that they believe in. And what's happened recently is a route there. We people say we need strategies and stuff like this to take forward some of the work from COVID, i.e. the work of Lord Woolley, etc., etc. But Lord Woolley, he moved in to do this disparity audit for the Conservative government, and if he'd have pushed it to where it should have gone, we wouldn't need a strategy now because it would be all implemented. But what I'm saying, I do this for the love and commitment of my people. We have to be wary of the people that do this because it pays their mortgage. I'm fighting for my people of my ilk, and everybody else in general, but I'm fighting for the BAME people that need a place for their vote and need to understand that by registering to vote, then you can affect change. It's no good sitting in front of the television or watching this on Facebook and throwing things at the laptop or the screen or whatever. You need to be, they always say you have to pay to play, and that's what I'm saying.
Don't throw things at your Facebook, at your laptop, dear viewer. We will not be held responsible for the consequences. We are not advising that action you're doing now. Because I would take issue with you a bit. I should have said at the start, actually, I haven't been banging on about it enough. Viewers can actually, if you're watching the live stream, ring into the studio and take issue with us. Our number is 0208 1234507. That's 0208 1234507. You can ring that number and you'll come straight through to the studio if you want. But our viewers are usually very shy and don't want to do that. But I take issue with you a little bit because I think that in the north, that big vote is so for the Tories from previously Labour voters. It's so reminiscent of what happened down here on the Isle of Dogs. And it's all about when people feel their community is being marginalised. And that's when, they turn to sort of the nationalist, the racist side and so on. So Corbyn actually got quite a large vote, larger than expected, in the 2017 general election. And I think that actually frightened the establishment. I think they never thought he would win, never thought he'd come anywhere near winning. And although his own party was, over half of the MPs were deriding him and saying, Margaret Hodge actually said, don't vote for Jeremy Corbyn, he'd be a dreadful prime minister. And then he lost. He didn't become prime minister. And she turned around and said, I don't understand why Labour didn't win. Oh, thank you, Margaret. That's another sort of great statement. But, and I think that the establishment was so rattled when they saw Corbyn's party come so close. That's when the big campaign against Corbyn began, and I personally think Starmer will just be a stopgap. He's an Ed Miliband, we're not quite sure what we're doing, so you just be leader for a while we think about it. And I really worry about the recession and whether any party is going to be good enough to come up with a way out of the recession. As you say, Boris is just repurposing money. And I don't know where it's going to go, and I just hope it doesn't go on the streets. But
to put it straight, if they don't get grip of it, then you could see that it will turn onto the streets. Yes, you're right in a sense that Corbyn had undue criticism from the media, from the establishment, etc., etc. I just saw that he didn't cover himself in glory when the anti-Semitism thing came in. I think that's what did it for him. But he wasn't a fan of he wasn't a poster boy for the establishment. You're right, quite correct. And also his party members, etc. His MPs, etc. Because the members loved him. I could see a coalition is needed to remove this Tory government, and or a coalition is needed to govern going forward, because we cannot sit there firing out sound bites at election time, and then watching it all play out. Once they get in, everything changes, because these people that are looking for us to give them the mandate and for us to feel comfortable with them there. I don't think they've got that anymore. I think the young people have got their eyes open. I think the young people are on edge, and especially the BAME people, because they're saying this racism is a matter of life and death. Even before the coronavirus pandemic, racial inequalities, well, at the end of the day, it was bad anyway. You were dealt a bad hand in housing and employment, etc., etc. So I believe that it's now young people are fighting. They're not literally fighting. They're fighting for their futures. The education system is poor. Okay, COVID this year, those leaving school and exams, etc., college and university. Okay, you can have this mark, but if you don't like it, you can try again. Any employer of their sort is going to be aware of 2020 COVID. The people coming from that era, they obviously you can't rely on their exam marks, etc.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, being of this ilk and black skin, or a black and Asian skin, turning up for a job. Oh, when did you take your qualifications? In 20? It's bad enough being shown the door, let alone you need 20. When was it? 2020. Oh, when is? Oh, okay. 1 minute. What postcode is? Oh, hang on a minute. Should it be named blind? No, he lives in E1 or E2 or SE15 or SE. You got the wrong postcode. You got the wrong skin color, and you took your studies in the wrong year. So you stand not a hope in hell's chance.
I think this may have to be my last question, but I think that's a very valid point. Why do you think it kicked off the way it did? George Floyd wasn't the first black man to be killed by the police. George Floyd wasn't the first man to be killed by racists. He wasn't the first person to be killed in the USA by the police. Why has it just gone so fast this time? There's all sorts of celebrities, sort of speaking out about it now.
Because it's enough is enough. They've been seeing these things happen over there for years. Nothing has been done. And then to watch, I think normally they've got a story. Oh, the mother this or the father that, and there was a domestic going on, etc., etc. And Mr. So-and-so attacked the police and all the rest of it. But they didn't have it this time. We are a world of technology, and thank you for the mobile phone. And they filmed it 8 minutes and 46 seconds. That showed a man being murdered on live television. And I think that is what woke them up. Because for years, we are saying, oh, this happened, that happened. And you think to yourself, oh, maybe they're running. Because that's they feed you this. Oh, maybe he was selling drugs or narcotic, or he beat his wife or whatever it may be. That's what you always hear. And then this time, you found a man on the ground calling for his mother. That's the one, mum, calling. That resonated with a lot of people. And me, I have my son's not a young man. My son's nearly off the calendar. But you think about, this could have been your kid. Yeah, they've been doing this for years. We've been believing them, and now we see this. No. Then obviously Black Lives Matter have been saying it for quite a few years. And then when you come over here and you look at Ration Charles in Hackney, Edison da Costa in Newham, the huge black ethnic minority communities, high deprivation, all this was going on. And you're thinking, well, hang on a minute. This is closer to home than we think. America is blunt. They're in your face. But in the United Kingdom, it's covert. It's hi, hello, rubbing you on the back, feeling for the soft spot to stick the knife in you. So people were seeing basically, this is us. This is going to happen to us. And you then, when you're seeing people walking and you're looking at the people marching, and it's black, it's white, it's everybody looked up and said, hang on a minute, we were born at the same place, we are neighbors, we are friends, we are in relationship together of all kind of colors and all kind of persuasions, gay, lesbian, transgender, black, white, you name it. And then you think, hang on a minute, this society is discriminating against these people. No, this is not happening anymore. And they've made a stand. They've made the Race Relations Act of 50 years, which we fought 50 years ago, which was only covered 3 areas. They've made it, they've turned it on its head. You know what I mean? They've turned it on its head. You're now looking at people sitting there and saying that the whole thing's got to change. The 2010 Act needs to look at and be more reflective of the population that it's trying to govern and it's trying to legislate over. All these things. But when you look at, you have to look at the Russian Charles that choked on his caffeine.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And then Edison, the Costa, those ones, they hit home. They hit home, and no matter what anybody says, they clicked. And everybody now says, you know what? If they don't listen to you, let's go and march peacefully. Peacefully. The establishment would love it to turn out into a riot and all the rest of it. But peacefully go out there and have your say. But most of all, register to vote. Because if you register to vote, you can effect change. And I use the Lewisham Council method. They wanted to scrap Millwall Football Club. And Millwall Football Club said this: we are going to put fans to stand in every single one of your wards. And closing down the football club and redeveloping its ground, that went away. So what I say to people is this: if you're not happy, please just register to vote. If you don't know who to vote for, red, blue, or our yellow, not a problem. But at least register to vote, because you can make sure your vote counts. These people can't do what they want to do if you vote to stop them. And Johnson gave tongue-in-cheek when we were speaking about it. He said, well, if they don't like it, they can vote. They can use their vote at the next election, because he knows they don't register to vote. You know what I mean? So he can say what he's saying. He can do what he wants to do. The man that treats and talks about women in letterboxes and all the rest of it. At the end of the day, I say this to everybody on your show: register to vote. And I'm sitting here as a Liberal Democrat. You don't have to vote for us, but once you register to vote, you vote for whoever you want. And in Tower Hamlets, if you're not happy because you see your mother and your father go to work on Friday, but on Monday they have to go back for their jobs at 25 or 30% less, you know where you should be getting to make sure that you vote that man out of office. You'll get your chance.
That's brilliant. Thank you. I mean, I'm so pleased you mentioned Rashan Charles, because I wrote 7 or 8 articles in East London News about it when he died. And I thought that was so outrageous. And it wasn't on a mobile phone, but it was on the CCTV camera in a shop. And to see somebody, you know, when you look at George Floyd, you think I don't believe that kneeling on a neck is an approved method of restraint taught in the Minneapolis police force. So either, you know, he was not listened to his training, or he's just racist and feels that because it's a young black man, and, you know, what are young black men worth, that he can be powerful. Oh, it was so angry, and it made you, and it was the same with Rashan Charles. To look at that video and see that man, that police officer, lying on top of him, and the police officer said, I saw him swallow something, and the police officer wanted to restrain him, and so he lay on top of him, and and no wonder that poor boy was flailing around, because he was trying to breathe. And he couldn't breathe, and that police officer lay on top of him until he was dead, and then he stopped moving, and you can see on the CCTV that police officer stopping and thinking, what's happened here? And you can't think about that in reverse. You think about it in advance, you know. So I'm so pleased you mentioned that. And I actually did an article in East London News just a few weeks ago or a few days ago going through the parallels of the two cases. And why didn't it sort of take off? Why didn't the world shout about Rashan Charles in the way they've shouted about George Floyd? But at least they're doing it now. So, as you say, register to vote. And don't just register to vote, but then get out and about. You don't have to wait until May 2022 to talk to your councillors, to keep your councillors on the straight and narrow.
Keep them on their toes. They need to be kept on their toes. And as I said, on Friday, your mother and father will be losing their contracts. On Monday, they'll be taken on lesser terms. And so at the end of the day, make your vote count. Make it count.
Roderick, we're going to send you contact details for the Unison strike and for the various materials that are going around. And if you can help circulate that and get some support for those Unison workers who are trying to save those terms and conditions, that I'm sure would go down and be very much appreciated. It's been excellent talking to you. But I think we have to draw this to a close now. Normally I go through and do the East London headlines at the end of the show, but I think that's just such a good note to finish on that. I think we'll just finish on that there. So welcome aboard the fight to save jobs in Tower Hamlets, and hopefully we'll see you again as we march forward together side by side. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Good night now, and good night to the viewers as well.
Thank you.